'Tis the season, which means that with all of your holiday obligations and activities, you're probably finding it hard to find the time for the horror movie syllabus. But don't worry, Professor Santa has got something for your stocking. Ho ho horror, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. I'm Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the Horror Movie Syllabus, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it'll give you the details on what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. But what we do here is we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we examine movies from that subgenre. Today, what we are looking at are horror Christmas movies, and to be clear, we've actually done this before. We've actually looked at Christmas horror movies last year. What this video is essentially a recap of that video for people who didn't have the chance to see that video or don't really have the time to dig into it. We're going to give a quick recap of the movies that we talked about on the syllabus for Christmas horror, but we're also going to add a fourth movie, a doctorate level movie. Let me explain. For those of you that aren't familiar, we here at the Horror Movie Syllabus rank our movies from undergraduate, graduate, to postgraduate level, 3 picks for each subgenre in some sort of increasing order of something. And what we're going to do right now is, again, kind of give you the Cliff's Note version of that previous video where we're going to tell you the 3 movies that we picked and why we picked them, what we talked about very briefly, just to kind of catch you up. And then for those of you that did see that video, we're going to talk about a fourth movie, a doctorate level movie, a movie that's a little bit more of a deep cut, a little bit less familiar to the mainstream audience than the movies we talked about previously. Something that's a little bit more obscure, hopefully. This will give something for the new people coming in here, kind of catching them up on what we've already talked about, but also the people who have already seen the videos, who have been with us for the long run, something new to talk about, a new movie to discuss, a fourth movie being added. We're trying this out thanks to Josh from Movie Timelines and to Sarah the Rose Bride for the suggestions to do this. They are the ones that came up with a Cliff's Notes version by Josh and a doctorate level by Sarah. I'm putting those two things together to make what is hopefully a little bit of a bite-sized, quick hit video for you guys to check out this holiday season. And hopefully this works out pretty good. We'll find out how it goes. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into Christmas horror with our recap of the previous Christmas horror video. The first Christmas horror movie that we talked about was Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is an 80s slasher movie where a mental patient who has some severe trauma from Christmas dresses up like Santa Claus and starts murdering people, goes on a rampage over the holiday season. Really, this movie at the time caused a lot of drama and controversy. We talked about this in the video, how much people balked at the idea of a Santa Claus themed horror film, which is kind of funny now because we're talking about Christmas horror. But it was a really big stink at the time, and it's what made this movie so noteworthy and legendary. It also led to many, many sequels, which we touched on also in the video. I won't go into them so much here, but suffice to say, the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise was pretty notorious, pretty well known, and made a big impact. The second movie that we talked about was a movie called Krampus, which is a little bit more of a modern film and basically tells the story of an unlikable family that really kind of gets on each other's nerves and hates each other over the holidays, and how they unwittingly stir up the monster Krampus, which is like the antithetical Santa Claus. It's like Santa Claus's opposite, who harms kids and people who are not being nice, who are naughty, and basically, kills them. This movie is a lot of fun. It's got a great all-star cast. It's made really, really well. It's got great production values, and it told a story that I wasn't terribly familiar with at the time, but has become somewhat ubiquitous. Like Krampus movies are all over the place. Krampus is a big thing now, at least here in America. And so that's kind of a neat and new thing that has happened that I think is a good thing. I think that the Krampus legend being more of a pop culture thing is a great thing. And I'm glad that that movie stepped up and brought that to our attention. The third movie we talked about was Black Christmas. And we were talking about the 1970s original Black Christmas, which was like the progenitor for the slasher craze of the 1980s, even though Halloween, which came a few years later, kind of fine-tuned and really set the template for those movies. Black Christmas is arguably the genesis of it. It's arguably the start of the slasher genre. And we talked a little bit about that and its importance in horror history. The idea of this movie about a group of sorority girls on the holidays being stalked by a killer and picked off one by one, who's leaving them menacing phone calls and killing them in creative ways. and you seeing things from his point of view. There's a lot of the elements of the slasher genre in there, and it wound up being a very important movie in horror history. We talked about that. We also talked about the remakes that they had for that series, and how they're not loved by fans. So we went into that quite a bit too. So those were our three picks: undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level for the syllabus for Christmas horror movies. If you want a little bit more in-depth review, a little bit more of the text that we had with that, go ahead and watch that video. There's a link to that in the description below as well. But that's the quick Cliff Notes version of it. And now I'd like to get into the doctorate level selection for this movie. The doctorate level selection is a movie called Better Watch Out. And Better Watch Out came out in 2016, so it's fairly recent. And I think that's why it maybe doesn't have as much of a pedigree or is not as well known or mainstream as some of these other movies that I've talked about. If you haven't seen it, the movie is about a young girl who's going away to college, and she gets asked to babysit from a family that she's babysitted in the past one last night before she leaves. And the boy she's babysitting is, he's getting a little older. He's a preteen, or he's 12 or 13 years old. He's got a big crush on the girl, and he's trying to impress her, but she's got boyfriend drama. She can't be bothered with him. But then somebody starts antagonizing them, and seems like they're trying to get into the house. There's a home invasion situation where somebody wants to harm them, is trying to break in, and she's got to manage that and figure out how to keep the kids safe. And that's the premise of the movie. That's the start of it. And I don't want to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil this movie. And that's key because this movie caught me off guard. I didn't know much about it going in, much more than what I just told you, frankly. But this movie goes in places I didn't expect, some really dark and surprising places. And I was there for it, man. I really, really like this movie. It's rare that a movie catches me so off guard and surprises me, but this movie did it. This movie is not what I thought it was going to be. This movie was far more interesting and far more engaging than I thought it was going to be, and than what the setup denoted it was going to be. This movie was a blast. It's funny because the first 20 minutes or so, I really thought I had the movie pegged, and I did not at all. And so you have these characters set up in a certain way, and none of them are going to really wind up being what you thought they were going to be. And your opinions on characters and on the story is going to change a lot. And that's a very good thing. It's very effective. Now, this movie requires a lot of suspension of disbelief. There's a lot of stuff in here that you're going to just have to just kind of roll with, because it's not necessarily the most plausible thing in the world, but it's really well done. And the continual surprises, the continual reveals just really make this movie work. Like I said, you'll have to give this movie its premise. You'll have to give it a mulligan on some of the believability of it. But if you can do that, this movie's a ride. This movie's a tremendous amount of fun. I was not really prepared for how much I was going to like this movie and what it was going to do and the dark places it was going to go to. Now, I will say, as dark as the movie gets, it could have gone darker. It did kind of pull its punches a little bit, and I can't really go into that without spoiling it, and I really don't want to spoil it. But the movie could have gotten darker than it did. It could have gotten a little bit more bleak than it did. But even though it didn't, it still works out really, really well. The movie is really extremely well paced. Like I said, you'll think you'll know where it's going. You might even feel like it's going to be dull in the first 20 minutes or so. Believe me, it's not. It's going to take off, and it's going to be bonkers. The movie it's an Australian film, and it's an Australian cast, and the cast is really, really good. And at first I wasn't so sure, but by the end of the movie, I was sold on everybody's performance for sure. And we've talked about Australian movies in another video, and I could have, I guess, put this movie in the Australian category. But frankly, it really is a very good Christmas movie. But Australians make really great, fresh, original, and dark horror movies. And I'll go into that in the Australian horror movies video. But this movie is a perfect example of that. This movie is a great Australian horror movie. It's got those things that those tropes we talked about in that video to a T. It's a tough movie. It's a good movie. It's a really surprising movie. It's a lot of fun. And again, I implore you to watch this movie before anybody spoils it for you because it's really, really good. I really enjoy this movie. It caught me by surprise. It was a wonderful Christmas surprise. So this is our doctorate level selection, one that people haven't seemed to have caught on to so much yet, but I suspect may not be such a deep cut in the future. I have a feeling that this movie will become a classic. At least it deserves to be. So hopefully that'll be the case. If you haven't seen it, check it out and let me know what you think. So that's our doctorate level selection, but just for fun, I'm going to throw in an extra credit doctorate level selection, and that's Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. Now, Rare Exports came out in 2010 and is a Finnish movie that a lot of people do talk about. It's kind of a deep cut because it's a foreign horror movie about Christmas, but a lot of horror fans are clued into this. In fact, a lot of them brought it up when I was talking about both Scandinavian horror and Christmas horror, and for good reason, because this movie is really, really good. If you're not familiar with it, the movie is about some reindeer farmers up in northern Finland that come across or share space with some people drilling in the area who inadvertently unleash what seems to be a Santa Claus type creature. And the two kids of the farmers that work on the reindeer farm are involved in trying to figure out what this Santa Claus creature is. And there's a lot of talk about what can be done with the Santa Claus creature and could they monetize it? There's a lot going on in this movie, and I don't want to spoil it for you because it is an excellent film. You should definitely check it out if you haven't already. The movie has a lot of interesting things going on. First of all, this dark take on Santa Claus and his elves is a really interesting take on it that I hadn't seen before, and I really, really liked this. It's supposedly based on some Finnish legends. I don't really know anything about that, so I don't know if that's true or made up for the movie, but it seems plausible, and I liked it. I also liked the characters. They had a lot going on. That, you know, there's a language issue here because it's in Finnish and I don't speak Finnish, and the subtitles may or may not be up to snuff, but I got enough to understand like the plight of these farmers and their monetary problems and the insecurities of these children and why they're, you know, their motivations for not wanting to get caught for doing something wrong, and for some of the stuff that you know, their feeling of powerlessness and how they can help their families and stuff. There's a lot going on here that really resonates and really clicks really well in terms of character development and story, that gives it a lot of heart. But it's also got some really creepy stuff going on here. The creature designs, such as they are, the people, they're really just kind of like, you know, kind of scary looking people. And I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to spoil it. But it was very effective, even though it's really not very intricate or very you know, special effectsy. You know, there's not a lot of makeup going on or anything like that. But it still worked really, really well. This is just a really solid, interesting, fresh feeling story that works out really, really good. And I can see why it's so popular. It's got a strangely funny tone to it, but it also still is kind of taking itself seriously. And it's got a great ending that kind of helps explain the title. That again, obviously I won't spoil for you, but it really all came together nicely. This is a movie that was hyped up pretty well. And when I finally got around to seeing it, I was pleasantly surprised that it lived up to all the expectations that I had for it. It's definitely one that I think it's a cult favorite for a reason. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. Don't let the subtitles scare you off. Don't let the you know, the foreign storyline throw you off. It's worth your time. It's worth checking out. It's definitely one to check out over the holidays. If you've got some time off, check out Rare Exports. So that's our Cliff's Notes version of the Christmas horror video, along with an added new Doctorate Level. I hope you guys enjoy this new format. We're going to probably do this maybe once a month or so as we revisit some of our older subgenres and then add a new movie to them. It's something that I promised you guys I was going to look into doing, something that's a little bit more bite-sized, a little bit simpler, a little bit quicker. Hopefully this works out. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've got some suggestions on it. I'm happy to hear your feedback. One other thing that I said I was going to start doing is I was going to end every video by answering a horror trivia question. I got the horror trivia pursuit, and I figured I'd ask myself a question on camera, reading it for the first time, and then try to answer it and see if I could answer it and embarrass myself when I can't. I've read a few of these questions in the past, and I'm doing about 40% success rate, which ain't great. So you're likely to see me kind of flub it right now, but hey, let's try it and see what happens. And I'll give it a pause so you guys can maybe give your own answers. Let me know in the comments if you got your question right, and, you know, Scout's honor, because I won't know if you're lying or not. But let me get some glasses on so I can read this card. So the question I've got is, Ouija, Origin of Evil, in 2016, was based on a product sold by what company? And I think I know this one. I'm going to give you guys a second to suss it out for yourselves at home, but I'm pretty sure I know this one. So here's a second. Yeah, I'm going to say the answer is Hasbro, because I am a fan of Hasbro. Little known secret, I collect toys and action figures too. So let's see, was I right? I was right. It is Hasbro. It is Hasbro. So I got that one right. So the inaugural horror trivia question, I got it right. So I'm 1 for 1 so far. I think that's a fun way to keep things going. And have you guys stay to the end of the video, frankly, because apparently YouTube cares about that. But let me know, did you guys get that right? Did you guys guess Hasbro for that question? And let me know what you guys thought of the video. Let me know if you thought of the format, and let me know what you guys have for your own deep cut doctorate level picks for Christmas horror, because I know you guys have some ones that are deep cuts. Let us know. Let us know in the comments, because people like to check out the comments and get other recommendations. So let me know what you guys think of that. For now, I hope you guys enjoyed this new quick take Cliff Notes version of the horror movie syllabus, and hope you'll tune in next week for another great video. But until then, class dismissed.